Good day, good day. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Jay, and this is Homeschool Your Kids podcast. Today we have with us Zoe. Zoe, introduce yourself.
Hey Jay, hey everyone. I'm Zoe. I'm a co-founder and the creative director at Learn Libre. We're an online learning resource that's full of self-paced science lessons and science courses. We like to say that we teach through stories and you learn with your hands because we have a bunch of video lessons that talk about the stories of the world and the universe. And then we encourage kids who are using them to go get off the screen or maybe have the screen right next to them for a little help with instructions, but really get hands-on because that's kind of what science is all about. In today's world of technology, we use technology a ton in science, but really it's about observing and understanding the real world. So that's what we want you to do. That's what we want your kids to do when they're learning about science. And I'm also super, like, one of the reasons that I wanted to come on this podcast is because I was homeschooled as a kid for a while, and I went to a hybrid homeschool micro school. And I just think it's so cool what you're doing. Just kind of like bringing this out there and bringing all of these people with different perspectives. And I thought it would be fun to kind of talk about like my time as a grown up kid now, because we have so much like thoughts, so many thoughts from like so many different people and their different perspectives, but you don't always get to hear from kids. Sometimes you do, and then kids who have grown up now. So I don't know. I thought it would be
Yeah,
fun.
of
I'd listen to
course.
your
Yes, I saw
like
the hybrid homeschool. Yes, I feel like that is awesome. And I love that you're coming with that perspective. So please, please tell us more. Tell us more.
Yeah, I will. I'll kind of tell you. So I wasn't homeschooled throughout my whole education. So I don't have that perspective, but I kind of went back and forth. So I guess I got that whole like doing one thing, doing the other thing, doing one thing again, doing the other thing. I went to a like Montessori micro school at the beginning of elementary. And that was full time, but it was in that like smaller setting. And then I went back into public school for like 2 years, I think, a couple years. And then my mom actually started a hybrid homeschool slash micro school where we were in 2 days a week and out 3 days a week, or the other way around. Did all of that, and then my parents are split up, and my sister wanted to live with my dad because she wanted to see what it was like. She's always yeah, she's always so curious about the world. Like ever since she was a little kid, she's like, I want to live with dad. I want to know what it's like. She never did. And he is a great dad. And my mom, like thinking about this as an adult is crazy to me, but like she allowed us to do that. And I'm like, that is so selfless in a way to be able to like let your kid go and like have time with the other parent and experience that. But I went with her because I was like, wherever my sister's going, I'm going.
Aw,
And we went back into public school at that point, so kind of like in and out and in and out.
nice. Gotcha. So, okay, during the homeschool, the micro school, that was at the beginning of elementary. And then what did you do for middle and high school?
So in middle school, like late elementary and middle school is actually when I was in the hybrid homeschool. And
Okay.
then in high school, I went back into public school. So I feel like that was like maybe one of the more interesting transitions to talk about because, on the internet, everybody's always talking about how like our homeschool kids socialized, or what are they going to do when they interact in the real world? All of this. And
Right.
I'm always sitting here just thinking, if you're not sure, you could just like try.
Ask, yeah.
Yeah,
Ask
you could just
somebody,
ask.
try. Yeah. So how was that transitioning from public to homeschool, from homeschool to public? How was that?
It was like so easy. My experience is obviously not the same as everyone else's.
Of
Everybody
course
has a
not.
different
Yeah.
experience. But it was so easy in that I didn't feel any kind of like tension or difficulty with the socializing part. Um, homeschoolers like interact with other people, obviously, as we all
Yeah.
know. So it was pretty like easy and common to know how to like interact with a group of peers, how to interact with the teachers, everything like that. And then quite honestly, like not to sound like egotistical or something, the academics were really easy. And I don't think that was just come upon by myself. It's because we were doing so much in homeschool that we just had already covered that material.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. So I always think about the socializing aspect on the definition part, because you look at the definition of socializing, it's typically I think it's like setting like standards, like societal standards, like it's shaping a person basically into how they should perceive different norms or different standards. And so when people talk about socializing or the lack of socializing, I think on the aspect of, okay, they're saying that your child's going to lack knowing what's normal and what's not, or what's, what's cool, or what's in, or what's the, I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting. I think about it all the time, especially looking at my girls. All homeschoolers know that socializing or being a social individual is not an issue for homeschoolers. It just takes you actually talking to homeschoolers. Because I don't know why that, I don't know if that, like, I don't know if that character was perceived in a movie or in a television show, like, oh, the weird homeschool kid or something. I don't know where that narrative came from exactly, but I know during my time in the classroom, whenever I received a homeschool student, they were advanced, like you just said, like they found the academics really simple. Because I feel like it's a different level of thinking, right? Like when you homeschool, because you're being pushed to be so independent about your learning that when you go back into a regular classroom, it's like, oh, this is easy. Oh, they're telling me all this stuff. Oh, she up there modeling, like she's, showing us what to do. And so it's like, I know. So, okay. What is your verdict? Like, how do you feel about homeschooling in general in comparison to public school?
Oh, I was ready to say this at the beginning. I was gonna be like, okay, if you guys are only gonna watch the first 2 minutes of this podcast,
Right.
TLDR, homeschooling's great. You should do science. If you want to talk to me about science, let me know. I mean, seriously, I think it's so amazing. It's so cool to see it like blowing up a little bit and becoming a little bit more common, or even just like more of an option for people. Because when
Yes.
when my mom, she says it's like she probably started one of the first like hybrid micro schools. There were others, of course, at the time too. People have been doing this. But I think I looked up that the very first micro school, however they decided to determine that, was started in like 1973. Of course, there were micro schools before that too, but I think
Of
there was
course.
like that was kind of like the new age of micro schools. Um, and now I feel like when I'm just out and about in the world, people are talking about it. There's a what's it called? Kombucha brewery near my house. And we were talking to the owner there, and he is microschooling his kids. They're talking
Oh,
about
nice.
starting like a learning group at like in that brewery in the morning times when it's closed. And doing all that. And we were just kind of like going back and forth a lot. I don't have kids yet myself. And we're always just saying like, oh yeah, we're gonna homeschool, or maybe we'll do a pod or a micro school. I just feel like I do attribute a lot of, I think I wrote in my bio, like I consider myself a lifelong learner. And I attribute that to the time spent being able to be independent and curious, and kind of like having that freedom to go deep on things rather than wide, and make sure to like cover every single specific thing. And I feel like through homeschooling, it allowed me to like do that and have a good understanding of all the academics. Like you said, it's like somehow we're going deep rather than wide, but covering more material at the same time.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, I just think that I think it's great, honestly, for anybody to be able to spend some time doing it, assuming that they have like the resources and that is possible for them, even if it's not like the entire K through 12. If it is, that's amazing too. But I think it's cool to be able to, I guess, encourage parents like, hey, why don't you try homeschooling for a year? Maybe the elementary years are a great time for you. Hey, maybe like middle school, you want to just like take some time back, do that at home. Maybe high school, because you can't always go back and forth. Your kids will be fine, according to me.
Right.
um,
Yeah, no,
and
I agree. I feel like parents, look, if you want to choose a time, from my experience in the classroom, I say middle school. If you want to choose a
yeah,
time
that's what
to
I
homeschool,
was saying.
if you want to choose a time, honey, please, middle school, 6, 7, and 8. Take them home with you and shape those babies and pour into them, affirm them heavily because middle school
Mhm.
is rough. I don't, yeah,
I
it's
have
rough.
to say, one of the times that I was like in homeschool and in the micro school was in middle school. And I like actively tell people that I'm so happy because I like went through all kinds of things when I was in middle school and just like phases. Like I'm my mom jokes that I'm like live a life of phases because I'm always like so in on my like various things. And I was
Oh,
like having like a little like goth punk phase for half of middle school. And then I'm having like this whole other like sporty preppy phase. And then I'm like, oh, I want to be nature outdoorsy. And I never like it's I'm trying to experience the whole world while I'm in middle
yes,
school.
I'm right.
And like having that experience be like at home with luckily my wonderful and loving mother and like my sister and this other group of kids who are kind of being like brought up in the same way kind of like allowed me to not be labeled any of those things, which it can be like more common. And not that it's like the world's worst thing if you like go through a phase in public school or anything, but it is kind of different. Like you get that
Yes.
label, you get put in that group, you get like kind of sucked into it, and maybe you like are interested in it, but you don't want to do that forever. Like you change.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So being able to like do that in a little bit safer of a space, I guess, was really nice.
Yes. I just know that like that's just a pivotal transitioning like time in a child's life in general. Because you typically enter into middle school at what, like 12 years old, and you're there from till about 13, 14. That's that,
Mhm.
that top puberty, all those chemicals, the hormones, your voice is changing, you hit your growth spurt, you go home in 6th grade for the summer, you come back in 7th grade, you're about a whole foot, 2 feet taller. Like it's just so much that goes on. Your voice is, your voice change. It's so much that goes on in middle school to me that it's just like, and I used to, before I had my own kids, I used to say I was going to homeschool because I substitute taught in middle school, and I just saw just so much during that time. I used to say, oh, my kid's going to go to elementary, but I'm going to homeschool in middle school. Like they ain't coming in here. This is trenches. I'm sending my children to the trenches. Too real in here. But I don't know. I just know that I did a lot with 7th graders, and I just feel like that's just the roughest year for kids. I don't know. That's my opinion, of course, my thing. But definitely middle school.
There's like a lot going on at that time. Like you said, you're like going through puberty and you're like moving into adulthood kind of.
Yes.
And then also at the same time being expected to like really like constantly like focus on these various subject matters. They're already starting to like be worried about like what their grades look
Peers.
like, their peers. And then also they have like the pressure of having like their school sometimes determining what high school they go into, if there's like opportunities for like a magnet school or a scholarship if they're looking towards going to like a private school or something like that. And having like all of that on top of like what your peers are doing. My mom literally the other day was like, you kids were kind of sheltered. And I was like, thank you. I said, yes, thank you. I appreciated that.
Not a bad thing, Mom. Please no.
Yeah.
You talk to some of these kids, it's so funny hearing like teenagers say that there's too much going on. Like they're like, it's too much.
Yeah.
These kids are doing a lot. It's like your peers are doing a lot, but it's a lot going on in this time period that I just couldn't imagine being a teenager in school right now. I couldn't imagine that because it bothered me then, and we didn't even have social media. I graduated in 2003, so we didn't have like big social media influence. I don't think not Facebook, but MySpace came about until 05, maybe 07. I don't even know. But either way, like social media wasn't prevalent during my time. So I always talk to parents and tell them and remind them that you don't know what these kids are going through. Okay. Like don't ever think that you know what they are going through. Don't ever think that your time in school was their time in school, because it's not.
Yeah.
Nah, it's nothing like it.
I saw like an interesting like quote or social media post, or maybe it was a podcast. I'll have to pull up what it was, talking about how we are so focused, maybe not we, the general we, are so focused on like controlling kids in the real world in an effort to try to protect them, and have done like nothing to control or protect their online space. And it's like a complete, and they were kind of talking about, like people are not like letting their kids play outside as much. There's no more like come home when the street lights are on. That stuff is kind of like going to the wayside. But then they had these phones and they're just like on there, and people don't even know what they're viewing, what they're doing, all of that. And I just thought that was a really interesting perspective, where I'm kind of like, oh, that's such an interesting point. And that kind of like ties into that, like to homeschool or not to homeschool, especially in middle school. Like if you have your kids there at home, maybe they still have a phone, but you're there with them. You kind of like see them on it. Maybe you're able to talk to them and talk them through it. You don't have that whole like 8, 9, 10 with sports like our day, where they're just like off on their own, kind of like getting inundated with all of these notifications or messages, with like not having that like trusted parent or trusted adult to go to.
Yes, ma'am. You are absolutely right. And I think a lot of people have to take into account really like what we're giving kids when we're handing them a phone. Like you're giving them a mini computer that accesses everything. And you just think when they go on the internet, one misspelled word or one one thing can lead them to a whole like dark dimension that you don't even want them to be in. And you may not even find out that they went to, because they may not even tell you that they happen upon this stuff. And so it's just like really, it's really, I don't know, it's a lot as a parent to like you said, a trusting parent, having a trusting parent to come to with the information that you're receiving off of these lovely devices. Think about kids being in elementary school. That's why I always put parents in a visual of. Think about a classroom full of 4th or 5th graders, and all of them have phones. So you got a classroom full of about 25 kids, and all of them have a phone. And they all come to school same day, and they're like, hey, look what I found. Each of them are sharing. All 25 of these kids, this is socializing y'all worried about, right? So all 25 of these kids are sharing all the neat things that they found late night on their phone while their parents were asleep. And they're just sitting there huddling. All 20. That's 25 different things your child is learning at one time. Yeah, no, it's too much. It's too much.
It's wild.
It's a lot. It's just a lot to think of. when trying to, I guess, keep your kids in the know? Like you say, your mom said you were sheltered. My kids, they neither one of them have phones, but they can never say that they were sheltered as far as like not being out and seeing and doing. They do and see a bunch. Some of the conversations we've had, I would have never imagined having with at the time like 5 and 7 year olds, or they're 7 and 10 now. But just thinking about just the conversations we have had over this time period, and it just comes from them knowing that they can come and talk to me. Not anything in particular, nothing out the wind of I threaten them or anything. It's just the relationship that we built, that they know that all the lovely stuff that they pick up at the playground, that their friends and people that they come across to introduce to them, they bring it back. Hey, and Zoe, I'm not always ready for what they bring back, Zoe, but I'm so grateful that they bring it back.
Yeah.
Very, very grateful. So how has your relationship with your parents been since being homeschooled? Do you feel like it's deeper or more, it's more like the foundation is better because of the time spent with homeschooling versus public school?
It's hard to like say because I don't have like two lives for myself to compare it to. And part of that I feel like comes from the parent and how they are like acting with you, regardless of whether that's in the after school setting or not. But like having a mom who was like so involved and like interested in our lives and our education, that would start a micro school that we could go to.
Right.
I definitely feel like that played a huge part in it. I actually call my mom. So in Montessori, they call the teachers the guides, and I'm calling her my forever guide because she she was actually my teacher. She was my guide, and then she has been like my guide as I navigate adulthood, and she's now actually like my curriculum guide as we're creating Montessori lab, or sorry, as we're creating Learn Libre, because she is like there, like playing an active role, like bouncing ideas off of me and things like that. So it's definitely something that has made me grow a relationship with her through like my various forms of education, I guess, whether that's like with her as a teacher out there on my own, and now kind of like creating an education resource and being in the education space. So I think definitely.
The relationship,
how about you?
Is great. I agree. As far as me and my daughter's relationship, I feel like homeschooling has definitely amplified our relationship and all the beautiful time that has been spent. So I appreciate it. So with your love for science, did you spend a lot of time with science as a kid? How did that come about?
I spent a lot of science time as a kid. And I have to say, like, my one like thing for the listeners to tell them, I guess, is that you should prioritize and make science so important in your child's education, but that might not mean what you think it means. Um, it doesn't mean that like if your child doesn't know the like valence electron numbers of carbon, that they're not gonna like do well in the world. I don't even know that myself. I don't even want to make a guess because I'm gonna embarrass myself and make people think that I don't know what I'm talking about in science. But you like want to give them the skills to think like a scientist, because that is kind of the way that we're moving through the world now. We live in an age of information. So not that there's no need to learn information, you do need to learn information, but you also have information at your fingertips all the time. Like I am always talking like I'm scared of technology and think it's nuts that like kids have it so early, but I'm also talking so highly of it all the time because it has allowed us access to this world that like we've never had before. I mean, just like going on vetting YouTube videos and showing them to your kids about like different field trips from like different perspectives, seeing different like cultures that you may have not really gotten to experience before in the same way, is so amazing. And teaching your kids how to kind of like go through the scientific process is, I think, like one of the greatest skills that they can take with them into the world in the future, because we like don't realistically know what the future holds. We never do. We don't know what the job market looks like. We don't know what the economy will look like. We don't know really what people will be doing. Like, will we all be working for AI? Will we be like not working because of AI? You know, there's so many questions now, that giving children information is not really like enough. You need to teach them how to seek out and understand information, and giving them like that freedom, which is done so well through homeschool, I think, to get deep into a project and actually like make an observation, ask a question about it, do some background research on it, asking your parents if you can like do an experiment about it. Experimenting and like seeing what actually happens is huge. I mean, that's really how you learn everything. If you think about it, even from like the most basic little things, like when you're a little toddler, you have like a ball in your hand and you throw it at your sister because honestly, you want to see what happens. And that's your little experiment, and your sister doesn't like it and whatever. So you're always like doing that kind of experimenting. And I think some of my like favorite memories from being a kid are getting to like dive into those like weird science experiments that my mom let me roll with because I had a question or like an observation. I remember one, I have a ton actually. I think I wrote like a list so that I wouldn't forget some. But one of them, that I did this with a couple of our friends who were learning with us. And we really wanted to lure a pet bird into our like home because none of us had pets, and we wanted a pet, and we were like, well, maybe we can get one ourselves. And so we built a nest, and we went and we like looked in our books, and we asked our parents, and we asked some other like people who were at the park with us and stuff, like, what's in a bird nest, what's in that, okay, let's make our nest. And so we made our nest, and then we were like, okay, well, why would a bird just come to an empty nest? They would never come to an empty nest. But what if they think that there are their eggs there and they need to be there for their eggs? And so then we like made little eggs, and we actually went so far as to like figure out what bird we were going to find in the area and make the eggs like that bird's eggs. So we like painted them with like the little blue speckles and everything. And we were
Oh,
like, well, wait,
wow.
what if they're hungry? And you know, I'm like, I mean, I must have been like 7, 8. Like, what if they're hungry? We should get them this. Oh, wait, this kind of bird doesn't eat this thing. It eats this thing. Okay, how can we find that? And like just going through all that. And it seems like kind of silly. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like these kids thought they could lure a bird with these like fake eggs. But it taught us so much about that bird and about like what birds need and what birds do
Yes.
and what their life cycle is. And then it eventually taught us that birds are smart and they're not going to come for your like paper mache eggs. But just like being able to go like that, that's just not going to happen like in a traditional school setting, quite honestly, because you're moving through all of these different subjects. There's 25 different people that are being like managed within the classroom. That you're probably not going to spend like 4 or 5 hours like making a bird nest and trying to lure it into the classroom. But it's like something, those are the things that you get to experience like with homeschool or with some of these like micro school or hybrid programs, where it's actually like letting the kids go through the scientific process. They're not just like doing an experiment and learning that one objective. They're also learning other things, and they're asking the questions, and they're like setting things up, which is probably my favorite part. And it's what we're trying to like replicate with Learn Libre, because I do know that like one of the reasons we started Learn Libre is because there is kind of like not like a fear, but science wasn't necessarily like everyone's subject in their schooling. And like most people know how to read. math is questionable, but
I mean,
but we seem to know, yeah, we know it's important, so we do it. And science is kind of like that thing where I feel like there's this like, oh, well, I never like I wasn't into science, or like I'm not good at science. And we're trying to kind of like give a little bit of extra like scaffolding while still bringing kids through that thought process. So maybe like we're making an observation. We're never starting a lesson by just saying like, hey, this is friction. Friction means this. That's boring to me, so I don't want to give a lesson about it. We're going to the park. I was just at the park this morning filming. There's these two slides at my park. One of them is concrete and one of them is metal, and they're like the exact same height and the exact same steepness. And I was like, should I slide down these? Like, which one am I going to go fast on? I'm so curious. Am I going to go too fast? I'm having all of these thoughts. So I want to like bring the kids through that thought process too. So our lessons are set up like that, where we're like observing something in the real world, either that we're actually going to or that we're getting like footage of online. And then we're bringing them into an experiment that they can actually go and they can actually experiment with, not like just a demonstration where it's like, ooh, it was cool. But like, okay, what if you do this? Well, what if you do this? Baking soda and vinegar reacts. What about baking soda and lemon juice? What about baking soda and ketchup? What about this? Well, why? Because that's like the experience that I got to have with science, because my mom was like, do it. She was like, test the pH balance of everything in the kitchen. Pour
oh,
every pour every sauce into a bowl, test it. And that's kind of like, I guess, like what I want to see out of science from people. And it's also like easier. And you don't have to know everything, because you get to go along the journey with your kid too. You just need to
yeah.
like guide them and help them and bring them along that journey. So if a kid asks you a question about science, one of the best things you can say is that you don't know. And then you
Mm.
can take them through the process of learning that with you, not just Googling it, although sometimes that works, but kind of like finding a little bit more background information, or asking like, how could we test that? Or what would we do? Or why do you think that? Like, where did you see that? Maybe we can like figure that out together and to like go along that learning journey, which is once again something that's like so much more accessible in homeschool, because you don't have to plan for like the bigger group. You don't have to necessarily like have all of your lessons planned ahead of time. Of course, you do some lesson planning, but if those things come up, you can totally just pivot.
Yes, yes. So you're providing curriculum in the sense of activity, like the whole concept, like science, like the activity lesson plan, the definitions, just everything science related. For what age?
So it's for 6 through 12, kindergarten through 5th/6th grade. And
Okay, so
yeah,
it's two.
right. Oh, go ahead.
You have two different programs.
So it's just one
Okay.
program. So it's like 6
Okay.
to 12 year kindergarten through 5th grade. Sorry, that's a little confusing. I know that like some people are not like necessarily always following the exact grade levels every year. So I kind of just say like it's for
Yes.
about 6 to 12. 6 to 12 year
Okay.
olds, maybe slightly younger, depending on your kid.
Okay, because I thought you said 6 to 12th grade and kindergarten to fifth. So 6 to 12-year-olds. Okay,
Mhm.
cool. Nice. Those prime years, science. Science is a
Yeah.
big thing in my girls' world. They love science. I love that you're talking about approaching it in the aspect of just making sure they're able to do experiments in general. I feel like life is a big experiment, and and all that we do, like we're just experimenting because we don't really know for real, right? And I even have a homeschool mom who I interviewed a while back, and big shout out to Miss Letitia, but she called each one of her children an experiment, and I love that because it is. It's like you
Yeah.
really don't know how it's going to turn out, but it's trial and error. But yes, teaching your children the scientific method as far as making predictions, making doing the observations, writing down doing the research, writing down your results and all that stuff. That is very, very, very important.
Mhm.
very. You said what?
Oh, I said, oh yeah.
Oh, yes. It's wild because how you put it, like, we don't put big emphasis on science, but everything that, like, we're science in ourselves, our body, everything, it's wild that we did not. Like, people don't hone in too much on that during school, and you have to ask why. Maybe because of how it's taught. Like you said, you don't go about just giving a definition of friction. You want to show friction, or have them, experience friction, as opposed to just, okay, this is the definition of friction. This is how so I guess the approach to it is probably maybe the disconnect, possibly, I don't know. But you found an issue and you're providing the solution. And I love that. What kind of activities are you having these 6 through 12-year-olds do?
We actually have a pretty big range, I guess I would say, of types of activities, and then I can talk about some of like specific activities that are my favorite ones.
Okay.
But so everything is split up into lessons, and within, just like on various topics, and then within each lesson we have like a video that's kind of walking the kid through the topic, relating it to these real world phenomena. Like I was talking about with you, we're actually transitioning some of our older videos to this new style that we've been working a lot with more lately that we like, where they're actually kind of like a two-parter. So in the beginning, we start with like, oh my gosh, have you ever slid on a really fast slide before? Look at this slide. This one's going to be so fun too. Wait, why was this one so slow? Let's test the slide materials. And then we're coming back. I'm actually sitting in my science studio right now, where we'll kind of like walk through an experiment and like the scientific process of setting up the experiment on video. So we'll say like, okay, what should we use to test this? Okay, I'm going to try this and I'm going to try this. And then, okay, what do you think will happen? And then we stop the video and we give them a chance to try either like the exact same thing, or sometimes we might have like an extension for people who want to like dive a little bit deeper. An example of friction is that like the main activity is testing different materials to see how fast something slides down it. But if you wanted to kind of like extend further into that, you can look at what angle something will start to slide. And then so they do that, and then they come back to our second half of the video where we then are like, okay, look what happened. We'll show you the results, in case they didn't work out for you. But we'll show you the results and then really kind of like talk through and give those definitions and like define what friction is, give some more real world examples, kind of talk about like the force angles and getting like a little bit more into like the informational part of the science. And then after that, we'll also have some follow-up activities, either like one or more, which are usually going to be more in the form of like terms and definitions, or scavenger hunts, or research project prompts, or like other project prompts, kind of more like building and engineering type things, depending on the lesson, so that they can like keep going if they want to. None of those are necessarily like mandatory to grasp the concept of the lesson. But if your kid is so into it, like, why would you not keep going? And we want to provide that too.
Nice, nice. So it's just like it's everything all in one. Is this all virtual, or are you sending out kits?
It's all virtual.
Okay.
We did actually send out kits at one point during the pandemic because we were like, oh my gosh, everybody was like, oh my gosh. But what we found, and what I am kind of happy about because I like it, is that we're doing a lot of our projects with like common materials around the house. And so a lot of people have them available. And it makes it just like a little bit more accessible financially for people, so that they're not having to like purchase this whole kit too, just to be able to like learn these lessons. And it's fun for the kids to bring them along like the whole procurement process. you can, of course, like prep it for them ahead of time. It'll be, you know, like a couple of cups, some baking soda, vinegar, different materials like a towel or a piece of tin foil and stuff like that. But they make these like really cool and exciting experiments. But if you want to bring the kids along with it too, it's really cool to allow children like in elementary to go through like all of the steps of a project from kind of like planning to executing. So having them be able to like gather those materials potentially around their house or potentially like going out into the world, as like we did this when we were homeschooling a lot, is that we would like go to the store and like have a list and have a budget, and just kind of like making that something that's accessible for them there. We really want it to be like we've been talking about, kind of like a real world experience, not just like this little contained like, here's a container of baking soda, vinegar, pour it, woo, like it exploded. Still woo, don't get me wrong. I'm still excited when I do it every time.
I
But we
know.
want to
I don't think that will ever go away. Yeah, that baking soda and vinegar is definitely a win-win. It's like, oh, what should we do today?
yeah. Like, do you want to see something cool? Okay, I have to tell you though, I started kind of like a summer science series over on our Instagram, and I'm not even joking. I think like all of our first videos are different experiments that you can do with baking soda and vinegar. So it's very versatile. Yeah.
Yes.
There's one, so this I guess would be just an extension of the baking soda vinegar experiment. But if you put like a balloon on top of the bottle, you might have seen like the balloon will
Oh,
expand.
yes.
So because of the gas from the reaction, the balloon expands. But that gas is actually carbon dioxide. And you can pour it into a cup because carbon dioxide is heavier than air. And so you can like pour it into a cup, let it out. And then if you just like, I'm gonna put my hands up here. I should get it out right now. If you have like a candle in your hand, like I'll do it. I should have had it prepared.
Oh, I have it blow it out.
Yeah, it'll blow it out. It'll blow it out
Okay.
because flames need oxygen in order to keep burning, and the carbon dioxide basically suffocates it because it just doesn't have access to the oxygen anymore. And it's actually what fire extinguishers are made out of. They have a ton of like pressurized carbon dioxide in them. So it's kind of like the simple thing that's like baking soda and vinegar, woo, like I have it in my cabinet and it was cool, can actually turn into this whole like exploration of like elements and like fire safety and all of these different things.
Yes. And so science is so complex. There's so many, there's just so much. Okay, how long is your how long is the program? How long does it take them to go through this curriculum?
It kind of depends on how often you're doing it. Quite honestly,
Okay.
it's not so much, it's self-paced. So it's not like, oh, we do one thing every week. I think I want to say we have like close to 50 lessons right now. So if you did one every week, it would take about a year. And we're always like actively working and expanding on that because there's, like you said, like there's so much in science that's so cool. And every day I feel like I was joking the other day, I was like, I'm that person that's like sitting here right now being just in awe and amazement that we have like channeled electricity into like a light bulb in our house. Like, what? That's crazy. Like, I know we never think about that. We take all these things for granted, but it's like nuts, like what is going on in our world. But yeah, so it's self-paced. It does cover K-5. There's definitely some like free room to go more quickly, but there is like more advanced lessons and less advanced lessons. We have a whole like lesson sequence guide on our website, so you can kind of see like at what ages they're the best for. But yeah, we're always adding to that too.
Nice, nice. I love this. I really feel science is really important. I've always felt that. And it just amazes me in my adulthood now, paying attention and seeing just how kind of it's like kind of tossed to the side, but not so much now because we do have STEM like really being elevated and pushed and talked about, and a lot of programs, a lot of grants, a lot of, like a lot, there's a lot of things going on with STEMs. I know the school that I used that I last worked at, they had a girls in STEM group, after school group, and they would do like different building robotics and other things. I just know that science is, I feel it's in everything. Like you
Yeah.
said, like it's just all a part. There's elements and knowing the periodic table and what's made up of. It's just so much to talk about in general. My focus right now with my girls, I will tell you, is the body and understanding and knowing how our body works, how white blood cells, fight off germs, and how red blood cells carry oxygen. So we go over things like that a lot, because it's wild that I don't really remember biology. I know I took it in 10th grade, but I don't look, I couldn't tell you much about anything.
About anything. I don't know.
And
It
we
seems
didn't
like
even dissect either, Zoe. Like I didn't dissect anything while I was in school. You know how TV shows kind of set you up for that. It's like every science class,
yeah.
across like all programs on television. So you know that this is science. They're going to be dissecting something. Then I got in school and there was no dissections for me. So I don't.
That's like, okay, this is like random fun tip, I guess. You might have already done this, but that it is like so cool, I feel like, to be able to like have those like hands-on experiences with science, because you will never forget them. Like one of the things that we did when we were in like the hybrid micro school is we dissected a fish, which is like one that I feel like people don't always think about, just because you can just get one like at the supermarket.
Right?
You don't have to like special order it from like a sign. I don't even know where people get things that they dissect. I don't know if I want to know, but it's like
I know.
you can get one that's like pretty easy. It's like maybe a little bit less like for you, and maybe for your kids, maybe they're into dissecting things. But yeah, it's like without having those like hands-on experiences, it's so hard to remember random concepts. Like I don't think I remember as a kid like learning anything in particular in class. Like I don't remember.
That's what I'm saying. Like
I don't remember anything. But like I don't remember any lecture, like not even in high school. Like I couldn't like pick out a lecture that I was like, oh wow, that was cool. But like I remember making a mousetrap car. I remember dissecting a fish. Like I remember testing all the things in my refrigerator. I even remember like writing my own like critique of a documentary, like pretending like I'm like a movie critic of the documentary, but like talking through like the science in it. Those are the things that like, oh, there's like a quote from Maria Montessori that's like, I think it's what the hand does, the mind remembers, or something like that. And it's kind of seems simple, but it's true. It's like having that like tactile experience is important. And then quite honestly, like I don't I don't think I learned about the human body in K through 12. Like maybe a
right?
little bit, like maybe like, oh, I know that I have a heart and a digestive system, but I definitely didn't learn like what was going on in that. It's actually one of the lessons that I'm working on. Like, I think in 2 weeks, we've kind of like started coming up like with the outlines and stuff. So I'll be excited to release those because in another part of my life, another one of my phases, I was a personal trainer for a little while during and just after college. And the biggest thing, I think, like talking to people about stuff like that, like health and fitness, there's lots of misinformation online. Everybody's different. There's so many different like factors coming in, but so many people just like don't really quite understand like the basics of what's going on in their body. And I think like that's the hardest part of parsing through all of this information in terms of like your health and your fitness, both like medically and like more on like the training and like outside of medical wellness side. So I think that's really cool that like you're going through that with your kids, because being able to like know your body and like understand what it does and like how it functions on the inside and like why it's important is like it's really important, especially for girls, quite honestly, to like have that and like think of their body as like this machine that like takes food and makes it into energy and all of that instead of like so much of the other messaging that can like be going on out there. So it's like one of those times that like is like feels to me like near and dear to my heart of like science coming in and like really playing a big part in like our culture and how we like talk about our body and stuff like that. Because when you're just like, oh yeah, this is food, this is what it does in your body and that, it's like it's
And
not it's
that's
there's nothing, it's not like a hot topic.
right, because I mean the nutrients, the vitamins, like
Mhm.
the things that we need to know, like what is it that my body requires? Listening to your
Mhm.
body when you're craving certain things, understanding that craving is associated most of the times with some nutrient that you're lacking or some vitamin that you're lacking, or it could be like an emotional tie where you're stressing about something or you're sad about something. It's just knowing these things that I didn't learn until well into my 30s, but making sure and making a conscious effort to make sure that my girls are really, really like just understanding of their body. We talked about fibroids last week. One of them asked about, I think we had heard a commercial or something. And so we got on the conversation of fibroids and cancer. And
Mhm.
it's just, I just want them, I feel like that is so important. And that's why because you're my second, I feel like science enthusiast, I will call you, that I've interviewed. And we just, like with her, I just reveled at the fact that science is kind of just thrown to the wayside, like you said. So it's like this, oh, okay, yeah, I took science too, but it's just like science should be one of the most tops. It should be up there with reading and writing. It really should.
Yeah. I think, are you talking about the one where she has like a mini medical school? I don't know. Is that what you would call it?
Okay, you're talking about Casey. No, not that one. Little medical
Oh,
school.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, not that one. I didn't even think about that one. Yeah, no, that was a good one too with Casey. No, and I can't even think of this young lady's name, and I feel bad right now. But and I may not have. Maybe I haven't released it yet. I don't know. I do a lot of these. However, the
Yeah.
conversation was really good. I don't think I've released it yet. Trying to think of
Oh
it.
no, yeah,
But
totally.
yeah.
I was just that like reminded me of like I listened to the one about like the mini medical school, and I think you said something about like, oh, I wanted to be a doctor, and then I was like, 8 years. I like had that experience too. I wanted to be a physical therapist for like the longest time, and they actually changed it legit like while I was in college so that you had to get like a doctorate instead of a master's, and I was like, no.
Count me out,
No,
dog.
thank you. I'm like, my student loans are capped out. Thank you. I'm
Right.
done.
But
Um,
you see how long 8 years is though as an adult. You're like, oh, it's gonna go by regardless. Like you could have did it, but it's like, nah,
I know,
I'm
right?
good.
I know. Now I'm like, wait, how many years have we been doing Learn Libre for? Like, maybe I
Right.
could be a doctor. But yeah, it was just like reminding me of like I had that experience in school where I was like, oh, I don't think I want to like be in the medical field anymore. So like, what would I do in science? And I almost like changed my major away from science to
Mm.
math actually.
You
But
were a biology major, right? You did
yeah,
biology.
I ended up finishing as a biology major. And I was just like, but yeah, it was like that part where I was like, what do scientists do? Like, even though I'm literally in school for science. And it's actually, we want to start like a new lesson segment called What Do Scientists Do? Because there's so
Nice.
many different things. Like we said, it's like the whole world of science. Like, what do scientists do? Like, there are science communicators, there are researchers, there are healthcare workers, there are just like people in like all these different fields. There's even people who
Yes.
like would call themselves data scientists, which is like another type of science, like you could even call yourself like a marketing scientist and like analyzing
Yes.
like that and stuff. But it's I'm like, I can't believe I was like like a full-grown adult and I'm in a science major, like wondering like what do scientists do? Like why aren't we telling our kids what they do?
Oh, because those it's not like you said, like science is just not thought of in that manner. But science, like even just thinking about a chef, like they're scientists. Being a chef is like, I don't know. Scientists are important. Experiments are important. That's how we've gotten so far as, as far as the advancements of everything in our world. Things starting off as an idea and people actually putting them into fruition and trying them out. That's an experiment. Like, that's what we're experiments.
Yeah.
Like it's just
That's gonna be like the quote of like the podcast. If you post about it on social media or something, everything's an experiment. We're an experiment.
Zoe, do it. Do it. Yes, no, because we are really, especially, yeah, we really are. And I don't know, it's a lot that comes with teaching your children how to critically think. That's why I found it so important to in teaching the scientific method, just teaching them how to actually be able to observe something and come to their own conclusion, not a told conclusion, not a taught conclusion, or how just like, oh no, this is what I see, this is how I'm observing it, this is my perspective, and standing in that and being able to support that with evidence. So thank you.
And this is why. That's
Yes, yes.
exactly like
Where do we find Learn Libre? I know.
learnlibre.com. Yeah, you're like, yeah, I know.
LearnLibre.com. I try to stick to my hour though, because we could definitely keep going, but I try. I do aim to respect people's time. But this has been a great conversation. I really have enjoyed it. Because there's so much. Like my girls love science, like they really do. My two daughters love science, and just talking to you is just like, okay, I think parents kind of steer away from doing as many science experiments as we would like to because of the cleanup process, but it's fun. It's fun and it's important. So thank you. Thank you for taking the time to create a bundle that parents can take advantage of. You looking for science experiments, science lessons, science activities, just science under better or more developed understanding of science. Check out Learn Libre. Check out Learn Libre.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's also available in English and Spanish. So if we have any like Spanish speaking listeners, or bilingual families, we have both of those in there.
When I saw your title, I thought it was like learning Spanish, honestly. Because I don't know, because of Libre, I was like, oh, shucks, okay, maybe it's Spanish. And then I read your bio and was like, oh no, it's not.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, that's good though. That's good. Spanish is important. I'm about to hop on Babbel and do what I didn't accomplish in my 6 years of Spanish in school. Let me see if I can try it again. But yes, no, Zoe, I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Before I let you go, can you give parents 3 things, especially as a former homeschooler, that you would tell parents in entering into their homeschool journey? Just 3 things that you would like, hey, take this with you.
Yeah, I would say trust yourself and trust your kids. I don't know if that's 1 or 2.
That's 1. That's
trust yourself.
Trust. Okay.
1. Trust yourself, trust your kids. And then I said this earlier, but you need to be teaching your kids science, but it might not mean what you think it does. It really just means learning about the world with them. The best question that a kid could ask you about science, or the best answer you could give to a kid who asks you a question about science, is I don't know, and then take them through the journey.
Yes. One more.
That was my 3.
No, you said trust yourself, you want those to be separate? You want those 2 to be separate? That can be separate. Trust yourself, trust your kids, and then teach science. What was after teach science?
Teach your kids science. And then the best question that your kids can ask you about science is, I don't know. or the
Oh,
best.
you
Oh my
separated
gosh.
those? Those are separate? You separate those go together. Okay, go ahead.
Let's go together. Let's go together. And don't try to lure a pet bird with a fake bird nest. It won't work.
But
Just
let your children work on it, okay? Especially if it's gonna take 4 or
let
5
your
hours.
children work on.
But I
Yeah.
may suggest that at the parks today, actually. Hey guys.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I have an idea.
How about yes, my daughter loves to go. We go to one of the parks. We're in New York right now. And when we go to
Huh.
Prospect Park, and they like to go mess with and catch turtles. Cause like you, my children don't have pets either, and they're always trying to catch their own. So when we go to Florida, my oldest is catching lizards, and when we go by water, she's trying to catch turtles. So that's her thing. And they've created fishing rods with sticks and strings and everything else. They're trying to lure them with chips and look, the snacks that we brought to eat for our picnic. They're trying to get them all types of things. But oh, I like the bird nest. Like let's catch a bird. Let's catch a bird. And these New York birds are a little aggressive, okay? Because they almost walk up
Yeah.
to you, take food out your hand. So they I think I'm gonna give that assignment today.
Okay.
Catch you a
I
bird.
like
Okay.
it.
Yeah. But thank you, Zoe. Thank you. Y'all check out Learn Libre for more science lessons, activities, and fun. And just grow with your kid. Like Zoe said, you don't have to know it all. Remember that we don't have to know it all, and nor do we have to do this alone. So if you need assistance, like I'm going to need with teaching my children math, reach out, outsource, find those resources, and homeschool your kids.
Yeah.